The devil may seem like a pretty straightforward concept. He's the personification of evil who opposes everything that God stands for. But the truth is actually a little more complicated than that. Just who or what is this personification of evil? This is the secret history of the devil. Many interpretations of Old Testament stories pretty explicitly interpret the presence of the devil, but a close reading of the text reveals some serious narrative complications. As it turns out, the presence of the devil is a modern gloss applied on top of these ancient texts. The talking serpent in the Garden of Eden certainly causes a lot of trouble, but nowhere in Genesis is it explicitly linked to Satan. In fact, at the time that the text was written, there was no concept of a single powerful adversary opposing God. In short, the devil didn't exist yet. Then there's the story of Job, the man beleaguered by tragedy after he's caught in a divine tug-of-war between good and evil. The text does make it clear that God wants to test Job's faith, but Satan isn't there as some sort of divine betting partner. Instead, the figure referred to as Satan is more accurately translated as adversary. Basically, the Satan of this story is kind of like a prosecuting attorney who's attempting to prove that Job and the rest of humanity are fundamentally flawed, and that being is very much in God's employ. The classic image of the devil consists of horns, a pointy tail, cloven hooves, and red skin, and as it turns out, that frightening image arose in the Middle Ages. Before then, the arch-evildoer looked very, very different.
Consider the Satan in a 6th century mosaic in the Basilica of Sant'Apollinare Nuovo in Ravenna, Italy, which is typically considered the first ever depiction of the devil.
In one section of the mosaic, Jesus is seen sorting out the righteous and the sinners at the Last Judgment, represented by sheep and goats respectively. Each flock is overseen by an angel. To Christ's right are the good sheep and a red angel. To the left behind the goats is a blue-clad angel who's apparently in charge of the evildoers, perhaps getting ready to herd them off to hell. But this blue Satan doesn't have horns or a tail. Instead, he seems just as much like the angel to Christ's right, complete with a halo, wings, and a beatific expression. Is he Satan at all? Perhaps so, at least as a heavenly functionary, but this is quite far removed from our modern understanding of the devil.
Could it be Satan?
So if the earliest depictions of the devil show him as an angel, how did we get to the horned and hoofed creature of today? That may be thanks in part to early Christian leaders who wanted to make the old pagan gods look more demonic and attempt to bolster their own religion by contrast. Consider Bes, the ancient Egyptian protective deity whose admittedly ugly face can be seen on all manner of pre-Bible artifacts. Bes was originally depicted as a short, grotesque figure whose image was meant to scare off things like childbirth complications, while also representing good times like partying, music, and booze. As a result, Bes shows up seemingly everywhere, including eating utensils, beds, temple buildings, makeup jars, and amulets. Eventually, as Christianity grew and began to set down roots in Egypt, Bes seems to have been linked up with the traditional devil imagery. It may be no mistake that the early images of the devil were blue, and many pagan amulets were finished with a blue glaze. And it wasn't just Bes who may have served as demonic inspiration. Over in areas with Greek and Roman influences, the half-goat, half-human nature god known as Pan may have lent his horns and general animalistic look to the Christian devil as well. Tales of the fallen angel known as Lucifer are often directly linked to the devil. As most versions of the tale go, Lucifer was a beautiful, perfect member of the heavenly host who decided to rebel against God. Inevitably, God finds out, and Lucifer and his cronies are cast out of heaven and into the underworld. If you look in the Bible, the book of Isaiah mentions Lucifer, although it depends on the translation you're using. In the King James Version, Isaiah 14:12 reads, "How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cut down to the ground, which didst weaken the nations?" But Lucifer is likely a description better translated as morning star, and it may have been in reference to a human ruler or a non-Christian god rather than Satan himself. John Milton's 1667 epic poem Paradise Lost also has a lot to do with connecting Lucifer and Satan in the modern imagination, as it is painted the fallen adversary as a sort of romantic anti-hero. In modern Western depictions, Satan is usually red, which is now a color commonly associated with hellfire and demons, but that wasn't always so. The depiction of Satan in a 6th century Italian mosaic shows him in blue, while other medieval artworks also feature a very blue devil in the midst of hellish scenes. Meanwhile, in European folklore tradition, Satan and his minions are associated with a rainbow of colors, from black to green to yellow. Even Tituba, the enslaved woman whose testimony helped kick off the panic of the Salem witch trials in 1692 Massachusetts, referred to devilish creatures that were red, yellow, and black, accompanied by a white-haired man ominously dressed in black. The completely red devil doesn't appear to have come along until later, with Satan making his debut in red tights during the mid-19th century. That popular depiction may have its roots in the Charles Gounod opera Faust, in which the diabolical Mephistopheles character belted out his songs while wearing red tights. If the devil wasn't around since the beginning of Judeo-Christian tradition, then where did he come from? It may have something to do with the diaspora of Jewish people living in Babylonia. That's where they came into contact with Zoroastrianism, one of the oldest monotheistic faiths in history. The tenets of the ancient Persian religion include a belief in the single God, Ahura Mazda, as well as the idea of divine judgment and separate afterlives for good and evil people. Ahura Mazda has an evil nemesis known as Ahriman, who keeps busy causing trouble for humans. It's very possible that Ahriman set the stage for Satan in both Judaism and Christianity, but the devil may still be causing more trouble than he was meant to solve. Essentially, the basic nature of God as determined by many religious groups makes the existence of evil a serious problem. According to the problem of evil, if God is supposed to be entirely good and just, then who's causing all the evil in the world? If it's God, then that spoils the idea of God's inherent righteousness. A devil may fill that role, but his existence independent of God also potentially damages the image of an all-powerful deity. One of the most seismic shifts in Christian history is the schism that resulted in a breakaway group of believers collectively known as the Protestants. Departing from hundreds of years of tradition, Protestant figures such as Martin Luther led the way to a new and distinctly different way of believing. This included changing Satan. For one thing, Protestants found the devil to be a useful marketing tool. It wasn't quite so crass as later efforts to use Satan as a mascot for deviled ham products.
Underwood deviled ham.
My mom makes great sandwiches. This one's deviled ham.
But some Protestants did use the devil's frightening image in an attempt to bring people over to their side. If the devil was part of the Catholic Church, wouldn't you want to jump ship and join the Protestant side? Even Daniel Defoe, the 18th century author of Robinson Crusoe, got in on the Protestant deployment to the devil with his 1726 polemic, The Political History of the Devil. Defoe was a Protestant dissenter who used his work to further his own views and to sully the name of the Catholic Church. It's easy to understand how a darkly compelling character like the devil could become the object of worship among people who are drawn to rebellious figures. Who embodies that more than the modern Satan, who's often portrayed as an anti-hero willing to stand up to God? But devil worship has been around for far longer than the swooning romantic era Lucifer. In fact, even medieval people were known to occasionally worship the devil, according to some accounts. It appears that a lingering combination of old pagan beliefs combined with some fear of breakaway sects like the Gnostics meant that church leaders were sometimes frantically worried about devil worshippers in their midst. More overt satanic worship came to the fore in the 20th century with the rise of Aleister Crowley, though his use of devilish imagery was more symbolic and also likely meant to shock more conventional people. Then in the 50s and 60s, showman and musician Anton LaVey turned his occult workshops into the Church of Satan. It's very possible that LaVey was more interested in the spectacle than genuine belief, but his church nevertheless gained wide popularity and may have led directly into the satanic panic hysteria of the 80s and 90s. As a figure who represents ultimate evil, it's no wonder that the devil has been co-opted as a political tool. During the medieval era, Dante Alighieri famously used hell and Satan in his The Divine Comedy to punish and lampoon his political enemies on the page. Dante was exiled from his home city of Florence for backing the wrong political cause, so he clearly had an axe to grind. And he's not the only one who's used Satan and his minions as political symbols. For example, Satan was deployed as a rallying symbol for socialists in the 19th century, as they wanted to break the bonds of the church and capitalism, and who better to represent their cause than the ultimate bond breaker? It was also a convenient shock tactic meant to raise their profile. And before Dante or the socialists, there was, of course, the Christian Church. The book of Revelation can easily be interpreted as political propaganda against Rome. Its talk of a seven-headed beast references the pagan Roman emperor, and naturally, the satanic forces at its disposal are those of real-world Rome. It may be referred to as Babylon, but most contemporary readers would have readily understood it as the devious realm of Satan himself.
Gone, Satan!
Quite a few modern iterations of the devil now present him as a cartoonishly evil figure, hardly the hulking menace seen in the medieval frescoes or a smoothly alluring Lucifer figure. So what happened to the Prince of Darkness? It may just be all Faust's fault.
According to German folklore, Faust was an alchemist who made a deal with the devil for fame and fortune.
The tale made its way onto the stage with the German writer Goethe Faust, as well as English playwright Christopher Marlowe's play Dr. Faustus. The tale became especially popular in 1859 with the premiere of Charles Gounod's opera Faust. It's here where Mephistopheles, the devilish character who steers Faust awry, appears in an all-red outfit. The eye-catching look caught on and eventually trickled down to other stage and film productions, as well as cheeky marketing campaigns for various products. But the appearance of this neutered devil wouldn't be possible if it weren't for a massive shift in how people thought about life and religion. Consider the Renaissance and the 18th century Enlightenment, which progressively brought about less literal interpretations of evil. If the devil wasn't literally a hog-faced horned being, then what was evil really?
Perhaps it was something less obvious, enshrined in society or ourselves.
With this shift in thought, it became easier to ridicule the previously terrifying specter of the devil.
All right, I'm leaving. I've embarrassed myself.
Check out one of our newest videos right here. Plus, even more grunge videos about your favorite stuff are coming soon. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell so you don't miss a single one.